Captain Daniel Wright stood on the bridge of his ship, the Valiant, staring at the screen in front of him. His hands gripped the edge of his command chair as he watched the alien fleet holding position at the edge of the solar system. 3 months ago, humanity thought they were alone in the universe. Now everything had changed. The aliens called themselves the Crythians. They had arrived without warning and attacked 15 human colonies in the outer reaches of space. 30,000 people had died in less than a week. Their weapons were far more powerful than anything humans had ever built. Their ships moved faster and hit harder. Every battle had been a massacre. But then something strange happened. The Crythians stopped attacking. They just sat there at the edge of the system, waiting. Lieutenant Sophie Martinez looked up from her station. Her fingers shook slightly as she worked the controls. She was young, maybe 25, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Captain, the alien fleet is still holding position. They are not moving closer." Commander Jake Harrison, a tall man with gray at his temples, spoke from his position near the weapons console. "They are watching us. Studying us, maybe." Daniel had watched the recordings of the first attacks over and over. The Crythian ships had swept through the colonies like a storm. Their technology was centuries ahead of Earth. Plasma weapons that could melt through steel in seconds. Shields that made human missiles bounce off like rubber balls. It had been hopeless. "Captain, we have an incoming message," Sophie said. Her voice was tight with tension. "It is from the alien fleet. Audio. Only." Daniel straightened in his chair. His crew watched him, waiting for orders. "Put it through." A voice came through the speakers. It sounded mechanical, like a computer translating the alien language into English. But there was something else in the voice. Something that sounded almost like emotion. "Human vessels. We are Commander Zekthor of the Crythian Advance Force. We request to talk with you." Crythian. The entire bridge went silent. Daniel looked at Jake, who seemed just as surprised as everyone else. "They want to talk?" Jake whispered. "After they killed 30,000 of our people? Our mender the party?" Daniel raised his hand for quiet. "This is Captain Daniel Wright of the Earth Defense Force. We accept your request. What do you want?" There was a long pause. Daniel wondered if the transmission had failed. Then Zekthor spoke again. This time, the mechanical voice carried something that sounded like fear. "We do not come with demands, human. We come with a warning. The Devourers are 6 cycles behind us. They are the reason we fled our home worlds. They are the reason we entered your space. And they are coming for all of us." Sophie's console began beeping rapidly. "Captain, long-range sensors are picking up something massive. Distance is 3 light-years, but the readings are enormous." 1. Daniel felt his blood turn cold. "How many ships?" "Not ships, sir. It is one single object, but it is as big as a small moon." The bridge crew exchanged worried looks. Daniel turned back to the communication channel. Zekthor continued speaking. "We have fought the Devourers for 7 generations. We have lost 1,000 worlds. Our military strength, which you have seen, means nothing against them, but we have watched you, humans. We have studied your history, your wars, your victories, when you should have lost." The alien paused. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "We have never known hope before, but watching you, seeing how you fight, how you never give up, even when you should, we felt something new. Your ability to feel hope when facing certain death is unique. No other species we have met can do this." Daniel gripped the arms of his chair harder. "What exactly are you asking us, Zekthor?" "We ask to fight beside you. To learn from you. Because for the first time in 7 generations of running and dying, we feel something we have never felt before." There was a long pause. "We feel afraid. Truly afraid. Not the empty fear of running away, but the deep fear of standing to fight. And yet, standing with you. We also feel that strange thing you call hope. We do not understand it. But we want to. Daniel looked around his bridge. Sophie's eyes were wide. Jake looked angry and confused at the same time. These were the aliens who had killed thousands of humans just days ago, and now they wanted to be allies. All crew! This is the captain, Daniel announced over the ship's speakers. We have 3 days before the enemy arrives. In that time, we are going to do something humanity has never done before. We are going to teach aliens how to feel hope, and maybe we will learn what true terror really means. He turned back to the communication channel. Commander Zekthor, you can send people to the Valiant. We need to talk, and we do not have much time. The channel closed. Jake moved closer to Daniel's chair. Sir, are we really doing this? Working with the species that murdered thousands of our people? Daniel stared at the screen showing the massive object slowly moving toward them through space. The Devourers, whatever they were, they scared the Crithians badly enough to make them run across the galaxy. And the Crithians had technology that made human weapons look like toys. The Crithians ran out of hope, Jake. They forgot how to fight for something bigger than just staying alive. Maybe that is why they lost. We are going to show them what humans do when we are trapped with no way out. And what is that, sir? Daniel smiled, but there was no humor in it. We make the universe wish it had never tried to kill us. An hour later, the docking bay doors opened, and the Crithian transport ship landed inside the Valiant. Sophie stood next to Daniel, watching as the ramp lowered. She had seen pictures of Crithian soldiers, but seeing them in person was different. They were huge, nearly 7 feet tall. Their bodies were covered in black armor that looked like insect shells. They had 4 arms, 2 legs, and heads that looked like a praying mantis with large, multifaceted eyes. 3 of them walked down the ramp, moving with a grace that seemed wrong for creatures so large. The lead Crithian stopped in front of Daniel. All 4 of his arms spread wide in what looked like a bow. I am Commander Zekthor. These are Sub-Commander Rixal and Science Officer Trenvor. Daniel nodded back. Welcome to the Valiant. We do not have much time, so let us speak directly. You said the Devourers are coming. What exactly are we facing? Zekthor's mandibles clicked together. The translation device called it distress. A force beyond anything you can imagine. They are not a single species. They are a collective consciousness that eats all biological and technological matter. They arrived in our space 73 cycles ago. We had an empire of 500 worlds. We had millions of ships. We had weapons that could break planets apart. And yet you ran, Jake said. His voice was hard and cold. Rixal, the sub-commander, answered. Her voice was sharp. We fought first. For 3 cycles we threw everything at them. We won battles. We destroyed their ships, and still they came. They learned from every defeat. They adapted to every weapon and every tactic we used. Trenvor, the science officer, stepped forward. He was smaller than the other 2. He carried a cylinder-shaped device. May I show you what we learned? Daniel nodded. Trenvor activated the device, and a hologram appeared in the middle of the docking bay. It showed a space battle. Sophie watched as huge Crithian warships, each 3 times bigger than the Valiant, fired their weapons at a dark mass of writhing shapes. This was the Battle of Crix Prime, our capital world, Trenvor explained. We sent our entire home fleet. 2 million ships. Watch what happens. The dark mass seemed to swallow the weapon's fire. Each hit lit up the surface for a moment before disappearing into the darkness. Then the mass began to open up, revealing thousands of smaller ships that moved together like a school of fish. They adapt during the battle, Sophie said quietly. They learn from each shot you fire. Yes, Lieutenant, Trenvor said. By the end of the fight, our weapons did nothing. The Devourers took our technology, our tactics, everything. They ate Crix Prime in 6 hours. 3 billion lives gone. The hologram changed, showing world after world falling to the darkness. Sophie felt sick watching it. Planet after planet consumed, billions dying, and nothing could stop it. So you ran to our space, Daniel said quietly. And you killed 30,000 of our people. Zekthor's whole body seemed to slump. There is no excuse for what we did. We were desperate and afraid. We saw your colonies as resources we needed to survive. We forgot what we were fighting for. We became like them in our own way. Mindless and hungry, thinking only of staying alive. What changed? Jake demanded. We intercepted your broadcasts, Rixel said. Your history files. Your wars. We saw something that made no sense to us. Trenvor changed the hologram. Now it showed old footage from Earth's history. Beaches covered with soldiers, frozen forests, cities under siege. You lose, Trenvor said. The translator seemed to struggle with the concept. Again and again. Your forces face enemies with more soldiers, better weapons, better positions. Logic says you should surrender. But you do not. You fight harder. You become more dangerous when trapped. We studied your Battle of Thermopylae, Zekthor added. 300 warriors holding a narrow pass against millions. They knew they would die. They knew winning was impossible. And yet they fought anyway. Why? What drives such behavior? Sophie found herself speaking before she could stop. Everyone looked at her. She felt her face get hot, but she continued. We fight because we refuse to let the universe have the satisfaction of watching us quit. We fight because giving up feels worse than dying. We fight because maybe, just maybe, if we are stubborn enough, we will find a way to win, even when winning should be impossible. Zekthor's mandibles clicked rapidly. The translator called it thoughtful consideration. Spite. Stubbornness. Hope. These are not tactical advantages. They cannot be measured or calculated. And that is exactly why they work, Daniel said. The Devourers learn from logic and patterns. But human desperation does not follow patterns. It is chaos and madness and creativity all mixed together. Jake pulled up a star map on a nearby screen. We have 72 hours before they arrive. The combined human and Crithian fleets total maybe 500 ships. You said you faced them with 2 million ships and lost. What makes you think this time will be different? Because we have never fought alongside humans. Zekthor said simply. And because for the first time since the Devourers came, I feel real fear. Not the empty panic of running, but the deep terror of standing to fight when you know you will probably die. And that is a good thing? Asked Kyle Peterson, a young ensign at the environmental station. It is everything, Rixal responded. Because with that fear, we feel something else. Something we thought we had lost forever. Hope, Sophie whispered. We do not understand it. Zekthor admitted. But we felt it watching your species face impossible odds. We felt it when we heard your captain's message to the fleet 3 days ago. You said, and I remember the exact words, if we are going to die, we are taking as many of those things with us as possible, and we are going to make them work for it. Daniel actually smiled at that. You want to learn hope from us. Good. But hope alone will not win this fight. We need tactics, strategies, and every piece of information you have about the Devourers. Agreed, Zekthor said. Which is why I suggest we begin working together immediately. Your unpredictability combined with our technology might create something the Devourers cannot predict. There is something else, Trenvor said quietly. Something we discovered in our final research before we fled. The Devourers have a weakness. We never had time to use it. But perhaps, together, we can. Show us, Daniel ordered. The hologram changed again. This time, it showed complex patterns and energy readings that made Sophie's head hurt just looking at them. The Devourer's collective consciousness works through quantum entanglement, Trenvor explained. It is a network that lets them communicate instantly across any distance. If we disrupt that network, the collective becomes individuals. confused and vulnerable individuals. How do we disrupt it? Jake asked. We do not know, Trenvor admitted. Every weapon we tried either failed or they adapted to it. But your species has a history of finding solutions through unusual methods. Perhaps your spite will see what our logic could not. Daniel looked at Sophie, then at Jake, then back at the Crithian delegation. All right. We have 72 hours to figure out how to kill something that has been unstoppable for decades. We will use outdated human technology and advanced Crithian science. Commander Zekthor, I hope you are ready to see just how crazy humans can get when we are scared. Captain Wright, Zekthor responded. That is exactly what we are counting on. The meeting broke up and officers began the huge task of coordinating between two different species' military forces. Sophie caught Daniel's arm as he turned to leave. Sir, do you really think we can do this? Daniel looked at her. She saw the weight in his eyes. The knowledge that he was leading humanity into a battle they would probably lose. No, Sophie, I do not think we can. He paused, then smiled without humor. But we are going to do it anyway. That is what being human means. The next 36 hours passed in a blur. Sophie barely slept, working alongside Crithian and human scientists to find any weakness they could exploit. The wardroom had been turned into a joint command center. Holographic displays covered every wall, showing fleet positions, weapon designs, and the slowly approaching signal of the Devourer ship. This is impossible, said Lieutenant Commander Greg Foster, one of the Valiant's senior tactical officers. He pointed at the hologram showing their analysis of the Devourers. Every simulation ends the same way. We hit them, they adapt, we die. Then we change how we think about it, Sophie said. She refused to give up. Trenvor, show us the Battle of New Terra again. The one where you said the Devourers hesitated. The Crithian science officer brought up footage from 15 cycles in the past. The battle played out as before, with Crithian ships being destroyed one by one, until suddenly, a group of damaged vessels charged directly at the Devourer mass. There, Sophie said, freezing the image. Right there. For 2.3 seconds, the Devourers pulled back. Why? Trenvor's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. We studied this many times. The ships that charged were badly damaged. They were leaking plasma, and their reactors were about to explode. We thought the Devourers were just repositioning to eat them more efficiently. What if that was not it? Daniel leaned forward, studying the frozen moment. What if they were actually responding to a threat they did not understand? Jake pulled up another display. Those ships were critical. Their reactors were on the edge of exploding. If they had been hit wrong, they would have gone supernova. Self-destruction, Greg said slowly. You are saying the Devourers were afraid of ships about to explode? Love. Love you. Love you. Love you. Not afraid, Sophie corrected. Her mind was racing now. Uncertain. They did not have data on that behavior. Think about it. They adapt to weapons and tactics based on patterns they can learn. But suicide runs are not predictable. There is no pattern to learn from. Rixall moved closer to the display. We never considered this. Self-destruction was seen as wasteful. We lost resources that could have been used to keep fighting. That is because you were thinking long-term, Daniel said. Excitement crept into his voice. You had an empire to protect and a species to preserve. You could not afford to throw ships away on crazy plans. But we can, Jake finished. Because we are already dead, if we do not try something insane. Zekthor entered the room carrying data tablets in all four of his arms. I have completed the fleet count as you asked. We have 517 ships total. 402 are Crithian with better shields and weapons. 115 are human with weaker technology but better ability to maneuver. And every single one can be turned into a bomb, Sophie said quietly. The room went silent as everyone understood what she meant. You cannot be serious, Trenvor said. You want to turn every ship into a potential explosive? Not every ship, Daniel corrected. But enough to create chaos in their learning process. If they cannot predict which ships are threats and which are just firing normally, we create uncertainty. Uncertainty is death to a collective consciousness, Sophie added, pulling up Trenvor's earlier research. Their quantum network requires coordination and prediction and shared learning. If we add random elements that they cannot account for, we disrupt the network. Greg pulled up a tactical simulation. Okay, let us think this through. We divide the fleet into 3 waves. The first wave attacks normally, making them adapt to standard tactics. The second wave includes random self-destruct ships. Some explode, some do not, and all of them act strange. The Devourers will try to adapt, Jake continued the thought. They will start treating all damaged ships as threats. That is when we hit them with the third wave. Ships that look damaged but are not, mixed with ships that really are critical, and nobody knows which is which until they explode. Madness, Rixel said quietly. Complete tactical chaos. Exactly, Daniel said with a hard grin. We are not trying to beat them with better tactics or technology. We are trying to confuse them until they cannot function. Zekthor was quiet for a long moment. His eyes studied the simulation. This plan requires that we accept heavy losses. Ships will be destroyed without knowing if their sacrifice meant anything. Yes, Daniel said softly. It does. And yet you would do it anyway? Commander, my species has a saying, fortune favors the bold. We also have another saying that is less noble but more honest. Sophie pulled up another display, showing communication frequencies. There is another thing we can use. The Devourer's quantum network operates on specific frequencies. We cannot disrupt it directly. But what if we flood those frequencies with random data? Trenvor's mandibles clicked with excitement. Impossible. The energy needed would be enormous. You would need to sacrifice dozens of ships just to create the interference. We have dozens of ships, Greg said grimly. That is the point. Wait, Jake said. The Crithians said the Devourers take technology and use it. What if we let them take something designed to break? Everyone looked at him. Jake pulled up technical details of human reactor cores. Our technology is primitive compared to yours. Commander Zekthor, our reactors are unstable and prone to failures, especially when damaged. What if that is a good thing, not a bad thing? Sophie's eyes went wide as she understood. We use ourselves as bait. We offer up human ships for them to eat. They consume our technology and add it to their network. And then we trigger the failures remotely, Greg finished. Not enough to destroy them, but enough to create instability in their quantum network. You would sacrifice ships as traps, Rixal said, knowing the crews would die. Unmanned ships, Daniel corrected. We strip the human ships down to just enough crew to fly them. Then everyone evacuates at the last moment. The Crithian ships can pick up our people, while the ships do their job. Zekthor looked at all the officers, human and Crithian alike. I am beginning to understand why your species frightens me, Captain Wright. This entire plan is built on sacrifice, chaos, and hope that the universe will favor boldness over logic. That is humanity in a nutshell, Sophie said with a tired smile. Very well, Zekthor said. I will present this to the fleet commanders. But I warn you, many of my people are still uncertain about this alliance. They remember the colonies we destroyed and the deaths we caused. And we remember our dead too, Jake said. But right now, that does not matter. What matters is that we are all about to face something worse than each other. The final hours before the battle felt both endless and far too short. Sophie floated in the zero-gravity engineering bay of the Valiant, watching as Crithian and human technicians worked side by side to modify reactor cores. Hand me the plasma coupler, she called to Ensign Lisa Chen, who moved through the weightless environment with practiced ease. Lieutenant, are you sure about these changes? Lisa asked as she passed the tool. If the timing is off, by even a tiny amount, the reactors will explode before we can evacuate. I know, Sophie said. Her hands worked with steady precision, despite being awake for nearly 40 hours. That is why we are checking everything 3 times. Nearby, Trenvor worked on a similar modification. His 4 arms let him handle multiple components at the same time. Your species' reactor design is remarkably inefficient, Lieutenant Martinez. It wastes nearly 40% of the energy. That inefficiency is what makes them perfect for this, Sophie replied. Those waste products create instabilities that your reactors would automatically fix. The devourers will eat our technology, expecting it to work like yours, and instead, they will get chaos. Trenvor's mandibles clicked in what Sophie had learned meant approval. I am starting to appreciate human engineering. You build systems that barely work, held together by what you call duct tape and prayers. Lisa laughed despite the tension. That is pretty much our entire civilization. The communication panel beeped. Captain Daniel Wright's voice filled the bay. All hands, this is the captain. The Devourer ship will be in weapons range in 6 hours. All modified vessels need to complete final checks within 2 hours. This is it, people. Everything we have worked for comes down to the next few hours. Sophie finished securing the plasma coupler and pushed herself toward the exit. Trenvor, Lisa, finish up here. I need to check in with the bridge. The corridors of the Valiant were crowded with people moving with organized urgency. Sophie passed a group of Crithian warriors. Their armor had symbols she had learned meant fallen friends. They nodded respectfully as she passed, something that would have been impossible just days ago. The bridge was controlled chaos. Commander Jake Harrison stood at the tactical station, coordinating with fleet elements scattered across the system. Commander Zekthor stood near communications, his translator working hard to coordinate between human and Crithian ships. Lieutenant Martinez reporting, sir. Sophie said, settling into her station. Sophie said, settling into her station. Daniel looked up from the central display. His face showed his exhaustion, but his eyes were alert. Status, on the reactor modifications, 87% complete across all designated ships. We will make the deadline. End quote. Good. Because we need every advantage we can create. Daniel pulled up the tactical overview. Latest sensor data shows the Devourer ship is even larger than we first thought. Mass equal to 3 of Jupiter's moons. How does something that large even move? Greg Foster asked from his position. It does not move through space normally, Trenvor explained, having entered the bridge behind Sophie. It manipulates gravity fields, essentially falling forward through space-time. The energy needed is beyond our ability to calculate, which means it has power sources we cannot even imagine, Jake said. And we are planning to annoy it with fireworks. Creative fireworks, Daniel corrected. Sophie, what is the status on the communication jamming? Sophie pulled up her display. We have rigged 42 ships, a mix of human and Crithian, to send out interference across the quantum frequencies the Devourers use. It will not block their network, but it should slow down how fast they can adapt. Slow by how much? Best case? 3, maybe 4 seconds per adaptation. The bridge fell silent. 4 seconds. In a space battle, that could mean the difference between landing a killing shot or being destroyed, or it could mean nothing at all. It is better than nothing, Daniel finally said. Commander Zekthor, what is the morale situation with the Crithian fleet? Quote, 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 quote. The alien commander's mandibles clicked slowly, indicating troubled thoughts. Mixed, Captain. Many crews are eager to finally stand and fight. Others are skeptical that these tactics will work where normal warfare failed. And some openly question the wisdom of dying alongside the species we wronged. And what do you tell them? I tell them that I have learned something in these days with humans. I have learned that there are worse things than dying. Running, forever. Losing hope. Forgetting why we fight. These are worse than death. Daniel stood and moved to the center of the bridge. Open a fleet-wide channel. All ships, human and Crithian. Channel open, sir, Sophie confirmed. Daniel took a breath. Sophie could see him gathering his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice was clear and strong. This is Captain Daniel Wright to all ships. In a few hours, we are going to face something that has destroyed empires and consumed worlds. The odds of our survival are not good. Most of us will probably die, and I want to be very clear about that. This is not some speech where I promise everyone will make it home. Sophie saw several crew members exchange glances. This was not the typical pre-battle talk. The truth is, we are outnumbered and outgunned. We face an enemy that adapts to everything we throw at it. By every logical measure, we should surrender or run. But here is the thing about humans. We are really, really bad at accepting what logic tells us. A few quiet laughs rippled through the bridge. The Crithians came to our space running from an unstoppable enemy. They fought for generations and lost. They learned that sometimes the smart thing is to run, and they are right. Running is the logical choice. Survival is the rational goal. End quote. Daniel paused, letting that sink in. But we are not here to be logical. We are here to be human. And being human means looking at impossible odds and saying, yeah? Watch this. It means standing beside people who were enemies days ago, because the alternative is worse. It means turning our ships into bombs, our last moments into weapons, our fear into fury. His voice grew harder, more intense. The Devourers think they are unstoppable because they can adapt to any strategy, any weapon. But they have never faced something truly unpredictable. They have never faced human stubbornness, human spite, human refusal to accept defeat. And they definitely have never faced humans and Crithians working together, because we did not even know that was possible until this week. Sophie felt tears on her cheeks, but she was smiling. So here is what we are going to do. We are going to fly directly at that thing. We are going to hit it with everything we have. Some of our ships are going to explode. Some of us are going to die. And the Devourers are going to learn something they apparently have never encountered before. Daniel's voice became harder. They are going to learn that humans and Crithians do not care what is impossible. They are going to learn that we can feel terror and hope at the same time. And that combination makes us dangerous. They are going to learn that when you back us into a corner, when you take away all our options, we do not surrender. We improvise, we adapt, and we turn our desperation into your nightmare. The bridge was absolutely silent, every eye on the captain. To the Crithian crews, thank you for teaching us what true fear feels like. For showing us that even species that have faced horror can find the strength to stand again. And to my human crews, thank you for reminding me why our species has survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and every disaster the universe has thrown at us. Daniel smiled, fierce and proud. All ships, prepare for battle. Arm all systems. Say your prayers. Make your peace. Or just sharpen your spite. Because in 6 hours, we are going to show the universe what happens when you threaten Earth and every ally standing with us. He paused one final time. For those about to die. For those about to fight. For those scared, but doing it anyway. This is our moment. Let us make it legendary. Channel closed, sir, Sophie said quietly, wiping her eyes. The bridge erupted in cheers. Humans and Crithians both raised voices in wordless battle cries. Even Zekthor joined in, his mandibles clicking rapidly in what Sophie recognized as the Crithian war shout. As the noise faded, Jake approached Daniel. Sir, that was either the best speech I have ever heard, or the worst, and I honestly cannot tell which. Daniel grinned tiredly. When has that ever stopped us before? The next 6 hours passed in a blur of final preparations. Sophie moved between stations, checking systems, rechecking calculations, helping scared ensigns, and even more scared Crithian technicians. She found herself in the observation deck at one point, staring out at the fleet assembled around them. 517 ships, mixed human and Crithian vessels, arranged in the chaotic formations they had practiced. Some were marked for the first wave, normal attacks meant to make the Devourers establish their baseline adaptations. Others had orange markers showing they were rigged to self-destruct. Weapons of last resort that would blow up when damaged. And scattered throughout were the jamming vessels, ready to flood the quantum frequencies with interference. "It is beautiful, in a terrible way," a voice said behind her. Sophie turned to find Rixal standing at the entrance, her exoskeleton gleaming in the starlight. "Commander," Sophie acknowledged. "Could not sleep either. We Crithians do not sleep as you do, but I understand the feeling." Rixal moved to stand beside her. Both of them looked at the fleet. "I have been thinking about your captain's speech. It was something, was it not? It was illogical, emotional, and tactically unsound to be so honest about our chances." Rixal's mandibles moved with amusement. "It was also the most inspiring thing I have ever witnessed. I finally understand why your species succeeds against impossible odds." "Oh? What is the secret?" "You do not fight to win. You fight to fight. The struggle itself gives you meaning. Victory is secondary to the act of defiance." Sophie thought about that. "I never thought about it that way. But, yes, maybe you are right. The Devourers fight to consume, to assimilate, to expand. They have purpose but no passion. We Crithians fought to preserve, to protect, to survive. We had passion but lost our purpose when everything we protected was consumed." Rixal turned to face Sophie directly. "But you humans fight because you are angry. Angry at the universe for daring to threaten you. And that anger, that spite as you call it, sustains you even when logic fails. So what does that make the Crithians now?" Sophie asked. "Fighting beside us? I am not certain. But I think, perhaps, we are beginning to remember what it feels like to be angry instead of afraid." An alert sounded across the observation deck. "All hands to battle stations. Devourer ship entering weapons range in 15 minutes. Sophie and Rixal exchanged looks, then headed for the exit together. "Lieutenant Martinez," Rixal said as they reached the corridor. "Thank you." "For what?" "For showing my people that there are worse things than death and better things than survival. For teaching us hope." Sophie managed a smile despite her pounding heart. "Do not thank me yet, Commander. Let us see if we all live through the next few hours first." "Indeed." "And, Lieutenant, if we do not survive, I want you to know it has been an honor to feel terror alongside hope for the first time. Your species has given mine a gift we thought lost forever. The gift of being absolutely scared while also ready to punch the universe in the face." Rixal's mandibles clicked in genuine laughter. "Precisely." They parted at the next junction. Rixal headed to the auxiliary command center, while Sophie returned to the bridge. As she took her station, she caught Daniel's eye. He nodded once. Acknowledgement and encouragement combined. The main view screen lit up, showing the approaching Devourer ship. It filled the entire display, a mass of writhing darkness that seemed to drink in the light from nearby stars. Sophie felt her breath catch. It was beautiful and horrifying, a violation of natural law made real. "All ships report ready, sir," Jake announced. "Fleet is in position, awaiting your order." Daniel stood at the center of the bridge. Every eye was on him. Sophie saw him take a breath, saw the weight of 517 crews, thousands of lives, resting on his shoulders. "Then let us show them what happens when they pick a fight with Earth and her allies," Daniel said quietly. "All ships, engage." The Valiant surged forward, leading humanity and the Crithians into battle against the impossible. The first wave hit the Devourer ship like rain against a mountain. Sophie gripped her console as the Valiant shuddered from weapons fire. Around them, The combined fleet unleashed everything they had. Crythian plasma cannons that could vaporize asteroids, human railguns firing metal slugs at incredible speeds, missiles with warheads powerful enough to crack moons. The Devourer ship absorbed it all. No effect, Greg Foster reported from Tactical. Their hull is adapting in real time. Energy weapons are being dispersed. Physical impacts are being absorbed. Exactly as predicted. 2. Good. Daniel said calmly. That is their first mistake. Jake, begin. Wave 2. On the tactical display, 70 ships broke from the main formation. These were the Chaos Makers, vessels running hot with damaged reactors and failing shields. Some were truly broken, seconds from total failure. Others were perfectly fine, just pretending to die. The Devourers adapted immediately. Dark tendrils extended from the main ship, reaching for the apparently crippled vessels. They are taking the bait, Sophie said quietly. Then the first ship exploded. The blast was brilliant, a miniature star born and dying in the same moment. The shockwave caught 3 Devourer tendrils, and for the first time, Sophie saw damage. The dark mass pulled back, the tendrils retreating as sections began to adapt. They are reinforcing against nuclear explosions, Trenvor reported from the science station. Increasing hull density by 40% in exposed areas, which means they are taking resources from other sections, Zekthor noted. Captain, this is working. They are responding reactively rather than predictively. Not good enough, Daniel said. Sophie, activate the jamming vessels. Sophie's fingers flew across her console. Throughout the fleet, 42 ships began broadcasting on quantum frequencies, flooding the Devourer's network with meaningless noise. Not enough to block communication, but enough to create interference. On the tactical display, the Devourer ship's movement stuttered. Just for a moment, just for 3.8 seconds, the coordinated assault faltered. And in that moment, Jake Harrison unleashed Wave 3. 200 ships, mixed human and Crythian, drove directly into the heart of the construct. Half were running critical. Half were perfectly fine. None of them showed which was which. The Devourers tried to adapt. Tendrils reached for ships that exploded before being touched. Other tendrils ignored ships they thought were safe, only to be hit by perfectly functional vessels unloading weapons at point-blank range. The careful, adaptive dance they had perfected over 7 generations of warfare fell apart into chaos. It is working, Lisa Chen whispered from her station. We are actually hurting it. Do not celebrate yet, Daniel warned. They are learning. Look at Sector 7. Sophie pulled up the feed and felt her heart sink. A section of the ship had isolated itself from the main network, creating a barrier. Within that section, the Devourers were processing the new data, running scenarios, adapting. They are quarantining the confusion, Trenvor said, isolating infected parts to preserve the overall network. Then we hit the isolated section before they finish adapting, Jake said. All remaining ships, focus fire on Sector 7. The combined fleet pivoted, concentrating their attack. For a moment, it seemed to work. The isolated section began to buckle. Dark material breaking off into space. Then the rest of the ship moved. It was beautiful and terrible. The massive ship folded in on itself, dimensions shifting in ways that made Sophie's eyes hurt. When it unfolded, the damaged section was gone, absorbed back into the hole, and dozens of new tendrils were reaching out with terrifying speed. Evasive maneuvers, Daniel ordered. The Valiant rolled, narrowly avoiding a tendril that would have cut the ship in half. Around them, other vessels were not so lucky. Sophie watched in horror as a Crythian cruiser was caught and pulled into the ship's mass. The vessel's scream over the communication channel cut off suddenly. We have lost 47 ships, Jake reported grimly. They have adapted to our tactics. The Chaos Protocol is not working anymore. Captain, Rixal's voice came through from the Auxiliary Command Center. We must retreat and regroup. Negative, Zekthor said firmly. There is nowhere to retreat to. This is the fight we chose. We must find another way. Sophie's mind raced, reviewing everything they had learned. Every piece of data. The Devourers adapted to tactics. They learned from weapons. They predicted strategies based on observed patterns, but they had never faced something completely unprecedented. "Captain," Sophie said slowly, "we have been thinking about this wrong." "Explain." "We are trying to out-adapt them. We are creating chaos and unpredictability. But it is still within limits they can eventually process. We need to do something they cannot adapt to, something that does not exist in their framework." "Like what?" Greg asked. Sophie pulled up the data on the Devourers' quantum network, the collective consciousness that coordinated their entire existence. "Trenvor, you said their network operates on quantum entanglement. That means instant communication across any distance, right?" "Correct. It is how they coordinate across a ship this size. But quantum entanglement is fragile. It breaks down if you observe or interfere with it. That is basic quantum physics." Trenvor's mandibles clicked excitedly. "You are suggesting we observe their network? But we lack the ability to detect quantum entanglement at that scale." "No," Sophie said, her heart pounding. "We do not observe it. We make them observe it." The bridge fell silent as everyone processed her words. The Devourers' collective consciousness requires them to constantly monitor and adjust their network, Sophie continued rapidly. "It is automatic, unconscious. But what if we force them to consciously observe their own quantum state?" "That would collapse the wave function," Trenvor said, his translator struggling to keep up with his rapid speech. "The network would break down. They would become individuals." "For how long?" Daniel demanded. "Unknown. Seconds, perhaps minutes. But in that time, they would be vulnerable, confused, unable to coordinate." "How do we make them observe themselves?" Jake asked. Sophie looked at the tactical display, at the shrinking number of ships, at the massive construct that seemed more like a force of nature than an enemy they could fight, and she had a terrible idea. "We need to send something into the ship that they cannot ignore. Something so unprecedented, so impossible according to their understanding of biology and technology, that they have to focus their entire consciousness on processing it." "What could possibly qualify?" Rixel asked. Sophie turned to Daniel. "We send them a human brain, connected to a Crithian quantum processor." The bridge erupted in protests, but Sophie pushed on. "The Devourers have eaten billions of species. They understand biology. They understand technology. But they have never encountered biological consciousness directly interfaced with quantum computing. It should not be possible. Our neurons fire too slowly. Our thoughts are too chaotic." 1. "That is insane," Greg said. "Exactly. It is so insane that they will have to examine it directly. And when they do, when they focus their collective consciousness on trying to understand how a human brain can interface with quantum technology, they will be observing their own network. The wave function collapses. The network breaks down." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. How long would someone connected like that survive? "Captain, you cannot be considering this," Zekthor protested. "How long, Sophie?" She looked at her calculations, ran the numbers in her head. 30 seconds. Maybe a minute before the neural pathways burn out from the quantum processor feedback. And in that time, the fleet could strike the broken sections of the ship? "Yes, sir." Daniel looked around the bridge, at the faces of his crew. "I am not ordering anyone to do this. But we need a volunteer." "I will do it," Sophie said immediately. "No," Daniel said firmly. "You are too valuable. We need your technical knowledge." "Then I will go," Zekthor said, stepping forward. "This is my penance. My people brought the Devourers to your space. Let me be the one to strike the blow that saves both our species." "With respect, Commander, your biology is too different," Trenvor said. "The interface requires neural pathways closer to the quantum processor's operating frequency. A Crithian brain would burn out too quickly." "Then it has to be me," Greg Foster said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. The tactical officer managed a weak smile. "I am not as smart as Sophie. Not as important as the captain. But I understand the interface systems, and someone has to do it. Greg, you do not have to. Jake started. Yes, I do. Because if I do not, we all die anyway. At least this way, I get to go out being the weirdest thing the Devourers have ever seen. He looked at Daniel. Sir, I volunteer. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Sophie saw the pain of command written on his face. Acknowledged. Lieutenant Commander Foster. Trenvor. Sophie. Prepare the interface. We have one shot at this. The next 20 minutes were the most frantic of Sophie's life. She and Trenvor worked together, creating a neural interface that was equal parts human brain science and Crithian quantum technology. It was a horrifying creation. Something that should never exist. A violation of natural and technological laws. It was perfect. The interface is ready, Sophie reported. But Captain, we need to get it inside the ship. They are not letting anything get close now. Leave that to me, Zekthor said. I will pilot the delivery vessel. My shields are stronger than any human ship. I am coming with you, Greg said. Someone needs to activate the interface once we are inside. The two of them moved toward the docking bay, but Greg paused at the bridge entrance. He looked back at his crewmates, at Sophie, at Jake, at Daniel. Hey, Jake? Remember that $50 you owe me from the poker game? 1. Yeah? Call it even. Sophie? Those equations you have been working on? The answer is 14, not 40. Sophie felt tears streaming down her face. How did you know I was stuck on that? Because I have been watching you chew your pen for 3 days. Captain? Greg saluted. It has been an honor, sir. Daniel returned the salute. The honor has been mine, Greg. Give them hell. Greg and Zekthor left the bridge. On the tactical display, Sophie watched a small Crithian shuttle detach from the fleet and accelerate toward the ship. All remaining vessels, Daniel ordered. Prepare to engage on my mark. When that interface activates, we will have maybe 30 seconds of vulnerability. Make every shot count. All. The shuttle dodged and weaved through the Devourer tendrils. Zekthor's piloting skill kept them alive through maneuvers that should have been impossible. They got closer, closer, until finally the shuttle disappeared into the dark mass of the ship. Signal lost, Lisa reported. We are blind. Sophie's console beeped. A new signal, one she had programmed into the interface. They are inside. Greg is activating the interface now. On the view screen, nothing seemed to happen. The ship continued its assault, tendrils reaching for vessels, adapting to weapons fire. Then it froze. The entire massive ship, larger than moons, more powerful than anything humanity had ever encountered, simply stopped. The tendrils hung motionless in space. The adaptation ceased. Now, Daniel roared. All ships, fire everything. The combined fleet unleashed hell. Every weapon, every ship, every ounce of firepower they possessed concentrated on the frozen ship. And this time, the damage stuck. Sections of the dark mass began to break apart, unable to adapt, unable to coordinate a defense. It is working, Jake shouted. We are hurting it. Sophie watched her console, watching the neural activity readings from Greg's interface. His brain was operating at frequencies that should have killed him instantly, firing in patterns no human consciousness should be capable of. And inside the ship, the Devourer's collective consciousness was observing this impossibility, trying to understand it, and in doing so, observing themselves. The quantum wave function collapsed. The network broke down. The collective became individuals, confused and vulnerable. 20 seconds. The fleet tore into the ship, ripping apart sections faster than they could regenerate. 25 seconds. Sophie saw Greg's neural readings spike into the red. 30 seconds. Greg, we need you to hold on just a little longer, Daniel said into the communication channel, knowing Greg probably could not hear, could not respond. 35 seconds. The neural readings went flat. No, Sophie said quietly, but the ship remained frozen for 3 more seconds. 3 seconds Greg bought them with his dying brain, his consciousness burning out like a star, holding the Devourer's attention even as he died. Then the ship began to move again, adapting, coordinating, but it was too late. They had done too much damage. The fleet pressed the attack, and section after section of the ship failed. The adaptation cycles could not keep up. The collective consciousness, still recovering from the forced breakdown, could not coordinate an effective defense. Primary ship integrity falling, Trenvor reported. 40%. 30%. 20%. They are fleeing, Rixall said with wonder. The smaller sections are breaking away, trying to escape. Let them go, Daniel ordered. Focus on the main ship. We finish this now. The final assault took 10 minutes that felt like hours. The Valiant shuddered with each volley, shields dropping, hull failing, but pressing forward alongside the remaining fleet. And then, finally, the ship broke apart. The massive, moon-sized horror that had consumed 1,000 worlds and destroyed an empire shattered into debris that floated lifelessly in space. The communication channels erupted with cheers. Human and Crithian voices mixed in celebration. We did it, Jake said, disbelief clear in his voice. Daniel slumped in his chair, looking exhausted. Status report. 312 ships destroyed or disabled, Lisa reported quietly. 60% of our fleet, including Commander Zekthor's shuttle. The celebration died. Sophie felt the weight of it. All those lives. Greg's sacrifice. Zekthor's final act of redemption. Sir, Sophie said softly. I am detecting escape pods. Dozens of them. They must have ejected before the final collapse. Retrieve them all, Daniel ordered. Every single one. Over the next hours, as the surviving ships began rescue operations, Sophie found herself in the observation deck again. The debris field of the ship spread across space, a monument to an impossible victory. Rixall found her there, just as she had before the battle. But this time, the Crithian commander moved differently, slower, weighted with loss. Commander Zekthor did not evacuate, Rixall said quietly. He stayed with the shuttle to the end, ensuring Lieutenant Commander Foster's interface remained active those final seconds. They saved us all, Sophie replied. Yes. And now, my people and yours must figure out what comes next. We destroyed one ship, but the Devourers are vast. This was only a single vessel. Then we will fight the next one, and the one after that, together. Rixall's mandibles moved in what Sophie had learned to recognize as a sad smile. Commander Zekthor told me something before he left for the final mission. He said he finally understood the human concept of hope. It is not believing you will win. It is choosing to fight, even when you know you might lose. That sounds about right. He also said he felt terror for the first time when working with humans. Not the empty fear of running, but the deep terror of standing to fight. And alongside that terror, he felt hope. He said they were the same emotion, just viewed from different angles. Sophie thought about Greg's final moments, his brain burning out while he held the Devourer's attention. She thought about Zekthor piloting the shuttle into the heart of nightmare. She thought about 500 ships charging into the impossible, feeling terror while fighting alongside hope, Sophie said. That is a pretty good description of what happened here. It is the title I will use when I write the history of this battle, Rixall said, so that both our peoples remember what was lost and what was gained. A communication tone interrupted them. Daniel's voice filled the observation deck. Lieutenant Martinez, Commander Rixall, please report to the bridge. We are detecting something unusual. They rushed to the bridge to find the crew gathered around the tactical display. In the debris field, something was pulsing. What is that? Sophie asked. Trenvor manipulated the display, zooming in. It appears to be the quantum processor from Lieutenant Commander Foster's interface. It survived the ship's destruction. That should not be possible, Sophie said. The feedback should have destroyed it. And yet it remains, Trenvor said. And it is broadcasting something. Can you decode it? Daniel asked. Trenvor worked for several minutes, then froze. Captain, you need to see this. The bridge fell silent as Trenvor played the decoded message. It was Greg's voice, distorted and fragmented, but unmistakably him. If you are hearing this, I guess my crazy plan worked. Cool. Look, I know I am probably dead, which is terrible. But hey, at least it was spectacular, right? I wanted to leave something behind, some data on what it felt like to interface with a quantum processor, while the Devourers tried to understand me. There was a pause filled with static. It was amazing, terrifying, but amazing. I could feel their consciousness. This vast network of thought, trying to understand how I worked. And for a moment, just a moment, I could sense what they were. They were not evil. They were just hungry. Endlessly. Cosmically hungry. And when they looked at me, at my weird hybrid of biology and technology, they felt something they had never felt before. Another pause. They felt curiosity. Not strategic analysis or adaptation protocols. Pure curiosity. Wonder about something they could not explain. And in that moment, they stopped being a perfect collective and became individuals with questions. Greg's voice was fading now, breaking up. Tell Sophie her equations were beautiful. Tell Jake his poker face is terrible and I totally cheated to win. Tell Captain Wright it was an honor. And tell Commander Zekthor, wherever he is, that I finally understood what he meant about terror and hope being the same thing. Because in my last moments, I was absolutely terrified and completely hopeful at the same time. The message ended with a burst of static. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Then, Daniel stood. All hands, this is the captain. We have won a great victory today, but at a terrible cost. We lost 312 ships and thousands of brave souls, both human and Crithian. We lost Lieutenant Commander Greg Foster and Commander Zekthor, who gave everything to secure our survival. His voice strengthened. But they also gave us something more important than victory. They proved that terror and hope are not opposites, but companions. That fear in the face of impossible odds does not make us weak. It makes us human, and that the only thing more powerful than adapting to every strategy is being so unprecedented, so impossible, so stubbornly defiant that you break the rules entirely. Daniel looked around at his surviving crew, at the Crithian officers who had become allies and friends. The Devourers will come again. They are vast, and we have only destroyed a tiny part of their force. But next time, we will be ready, because we have learned something they never expected any species to teach us. We have learned how to turn terror into a weapon, hope into a strategy, and sacrifice into victory. He smiled grimly. Greg Foster and Zekthor did not just save our lives today. They showed the entire universe that humans and Crithians together are something no collective consciousness can adapt to. We are chaos and hope, terror and defiance, all mixed into something that should not exist but does anyway. Sophie felt tears on her cheeks, but she was smiling. All ships. Begin recovery operations. Tend to the wounded. Repair what you can, and prepare to head home. We have a long road ahead, but we will walk it together, human and Crithian, united by the terror we faced and the hope we fought for. As the bridge crew returned to their duties, Sophie went back to her station. She pulled up the star charts, plotting courses home for the surviving ships. Home. Earth would need to be warned. Defenses prepared. Alliances strengthened. The Devourers would return, and next time, humanity and the Crithians would be ready. But for now, in this moment, they had won. They had faced cosmic horror and emerged victorious, not through superior technology or perfect tactics, but through the uniquely human combination of terror and hope. Sophie looked at the recovered quantum processor, now safely stored in the Valiant's science bay. In her imagination, she could almost hear Greg's voice, see Zekthor's determined flight into the ship's heart. They had felt terror for the first time fighting alongside hope, and in doing so, they had saved the galaxy. It was a beginning, not an ending, but it was a beginning written in sacrifice, sealed in courage, and born from the impossible idea that sometimes the most terrifying thing in the universe is someone who refuses to accept that they have lost. Sophie smiled through her tears and got back to work. There would be time to mourn later. Right now, there was a future to build. One where humans and Crithians stood together against the darkness. And if the Devourers returned, well, they would learn the lesson Greg and Zekthor had taught them. That the most dangerous thing in the universe is not the most powerful or the most advanced. It is the most stubborn,